Dr. Guy Hatchard, it's wonderful to talk to you. It has been a while, long overdue actually, but it's in worrying circumstances, actually circumstances that I would have laughed at 4 or 5 years ago if you had presented with me the bill that we are going to discuss today. But now that we know how far this government in New Zealand is willing to overreach, it's not just laughable. It's got deeply worrying implications for every single Kiwi who cares about their health, doesn't it? Tell us about the bill, what it is, what it stands for.
The Therapeutic Products Bill is a bill that has just gone through its first reading. Public submissions are available until the 15th of February, and it's a long bill. It's nearly 450 pages long, and it covers the whole range of medical interventions. So it's really replacing the Medicines Act and a number of other subsidiary acts. And a significant part of it is the regulation of natural health products. Now, this is the third attempt of the government to regulate natural health products. The first two attempts were abandoned because of public opposition. And the reason for this is that more than 50% of people take natural health products in New Zealand. So they're popular, and their regulation will be costly, and a lot of products will disappear. And this is regulation that is very much promoted by the move to really normalize all medical regulations all over the world between countries. And that's something that's very much driven by pharmaceutical companies.
So I want to pick up on that actually. There's a line I read: exporters and distributors can only make permitted health benefit claims if this goes through. They must be substantiated by scientific evidence, which is so ironic when safe and effective has been shown to be so utterly unscientific from this government. and that really the New Zealand government is backing the medical pharmaceutical agenda, this article says, to take away yet again our free choice to control our own body and our own health. That's at the very heart of this, isn't it?
It's a pharmaceutical outlook. And MedSafe is a member of the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Authorities, which is a body that is not a government-appointed body in any sense. It operates in an unregulated global space. It coordinates regulations across countries. It's funded by the pharmaceutical system. And there are some real absurdities here. You start in 2016, the government, Ministry of Health published a list of over 5,000 permitted or restricted ingredients. And some of these you would be very surprised at. You'd be surprised that mustard or cinnamon or eggplant or aloe vera.
Coconut, which everybody uses. What about turmeric, which is well known as an anti-cancer agent, well known, and most of us use in our food every day. Black pepper, cayenne, which can stop a heart attack, can help with heart attack problems. Cinnamon, which helps lower blood pressure. All of these things that Kiwis injured by the government policies over the last 2 years, Guy, will be desperately in need of these sorts of things. This book here says prescription alternatives, hundreds of safe, natural, prescription-free remedies to restore and maintain your health. This is something that intergenerationally, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, they all knew to use food as your medicine.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of studies now to back that up. Look at turmeric. Turmeric is an effective treatment and preventive for bowel cancer, and there are a great number of studies on this. And so, why is it being regulated? Well, the essence of the bill is this: is that if something can be proven to benefit health, it becomes a medicine. And also under the bill, only doctors can prescribe medicines. So effectively, it removes anything that is healthy from ease of use and puts it in the hands of doctors who are not actually educated in nutrition. They might have, an hour or two in their many-year course to become a doctor looking at nutrition. So it's a sort of reverse patenting, actually. Pharmaceutical companies would love to patent things like neem or turmeric extract or so on, but they can't because they're naturally occurring. So instead, you put pressure on governments to control them so that only medical authorities can use them.
But I said, Guy, it's laughable. I mean, my garden is full of aloe vera plants. So if I burn my hand on the stove, I go out to the garden and I break open an aloe vera leaf and I put the gel in there on my hand. Done. It heals very quickly and it doesn't hurt like a normal burn. What, are they going to come to our gardens and go through our gardens where we're growing rosemary or garlic? How on earth does a government become so foolish, so ludicrous that it thinks it can control the people to this extent, Guy?
It controls it as a product. If it was sold in a shop, it would get controlled. Take Rauwolfia serpentina. It's a herb that controls high blood pressure very effectively and very safely. There are studies on it. But you can't buy it in New Zealand. It's banned because one of its compounds, one of its alkaloids, it has many compounds, as all plants do, it is used in beta blockers. And so the monopoly goes to the producers of beta blockers, which have side effects, whereas the natural product is effectively banned. So that's how this works. And they'd like to extend this. In fact, pharmaceutical companies are buying up a lot of natural health product manufacturers. There is, and it's part of a move towards synthetics. So in this 5,000 list of ingredients that should be regulated, there are over 3,000 of them are simply approvals for synthetics. So a lot of synthetics they don't need new laws to do this even. Already, a lot of things that you buy in the supermarket, which are synthetic copies, which are not real in the sense that they are not exact copies, they're different and they have different effects, are now approved. You buy vanilla ice cream and it says on it, natural vanilla flavor. Well, that doesn't come from the vanilla plant. It's a synthetic copy produced via biotechnology, and it's never been safety tested. It is slightly different from the vanilla. It sort of tastes the same, but then it doesn't quite taste the same.
My point before, when I said they can't control what we grow in our gardens, I believe, looking at this whole idea behind this bill, we are going to we have a black market where we grow things and we exchange things and we make things at home and we help one another underneath the nose of the government. We will have to do this because they are trying to be so oppressive in our shops that we will have to find ways to help each other with natural products from our own inventiveness, probably again in the way our great-grandparents did before there was all this commercialization of these products. What's your feeling about that? The more they try to put their jackboot on our throats, Guy, the more people are going to become inventive. What do you feel that?
Yeah, people will vote with their feet, won't they? I mean, I have aloe vera plants in my garden too. I can walk out my front door,
yes,
and soothe the burn. Yeah, but even so, it's such a stupid enterprise, really. I mean, how are they? So much money goes into this. You're going to have to pay to register these products if you're retailing them. See, some people don't have time to go to their own garden. They're busy people, they're working. They want to take something that is anti-inflammatory, for example, because a lot of modern diseases have to do with inflammation. Well, they want to be able to go into a shop and buy something and take it. Whereas
absolutely,
this could be controlled.
But the point is saying to the government, this government overreach, this ludicrousness must stop. Now, if they won't listen, I believe this bill is going to wake up a lot of Kiwis. As you said, 50% the estimates of 50% of Kiwis like natural products. And with the injury rate that we're getting in New Zealand at the moment from a certain rollout of a government policy, even more Kiwis are looking at alternative remedies. How far does this stretch into alternative remedies, this bill, such as acupuncture? Things like that many people are looking at.
It's going to control anything that purports to regulate, to improve health. So, the government doesn't have the expertise to control this. It's an enabling bill. This new bill doesn't actually contain the 2016 list. It will enforce it, but at the moment it doesn't contain that list. It's going to appoint a regulator who will regulate all natural approaches to health, complementary approaches to health. Well, no one has that kind of level of expertise. How many, there's Indian medicine and Chinese medicine and homeopathy and
osteopathy, so many options.
Aromatherapy and so on. Well, the whole idea is absurd that one person can decide what is good for us. It's an absurd overreach, and there's absolutely no evidence that this is harmful. In fact, an EU report reports that natural health products, a comprehensive report, are 45,000 times safer than pharmaceutical drugs. So why are we giving the people who are banner holders for pharmaceutical drugs, the medical profession, control over natural health products? It's absolutely ridiculous. They're not harming anyone. There's no need for the government to step in here. Absolutely no need whatsoever.
And getting back to your point earlier, that this is being controlled by a non-governmental body that floats around on the international space, that is really a supporter and driven by big pharmaceutical interests. So there's clear bias here towards one way. Really, we need to just get people on drugs and jabs. So let's go into that point of it being an enabling bill. Go into that a bit deeper, Guy, because that makes it very subjective and worryingly so.
Well, the enabling bills are the tools of repressive regimes, basically. When Adolf Hitler came to power, he passed the Enabling Act. The Enabling Act basically said he could, basically do whatever he wanted. And this is a similar kind of bill, and they don't work. They've tried to do a very similar bill with natural products in South Africa. It hasn't worked. It's cumbersome. It's enormously costly. And that all gets passed on to the public. So this bill is intended that anyone who wants to claim that they can benefit health with anything has to register with the government. They have to submit papers proving that they can improve health and so on. And each stage they have to submit fees so that people in the government, civil servants, can assess this and so on. The cost becomes very, very large. I mean, if a single company makes 300 products, each of which, say, benefits two areas of health, they'd end up with about $3 million worth of fees that they have to pay the government.
Where have we seen evidence of that sort of chaotic over-regulation and overpayment to the government? Was this within Australia? There have been examples of that, haven't there?
Yeah, well, Canada is I think the best example as far as natural health products is concerned, because it's very hard to purchase natural health products now in Canada. It's highly regulated. See, what happens essentially, all this talk of regulation and so on, and they also say, oh, well, it'll make the public feel very confident and so on and so forth. The real effect is that these products disappear, except by products produced by very large manufacturers, and that contain synthetics, and that's what you get on your health shelves. You get products produced that are really nothing like natural health products.
I know with synthetic cannabis, it caused a lot of problems years ago when it was introduced by Peter Dunn, compared with the product made in nature. Should people be worried about synthetics? I'm sure the government will make many reassuring noises about that being safe and effective. Tell us a bit more. Yeah.
Look at vaping. Yeah, we're supposedly getting rid of tobacco products, very good. People will be more healthy, and we're replacing them with vaping, for which there is inadequate research on long-term health safety.
And huge profits to those who produce the products. Whereas here with the natural products, there are not the huge products going into the big corporates, as you said. The cost is a real worry. The cost for somebody bringing in a good vitamin C product, Guy, and many people know now that vitamin C is an essential, vitamin D is essential at the moment with all the jab injured that we have in New Zealand. What sorts of rises in costs are we talking? You mentioned 3 million, but just take us through why the costs go up so very much.
Well, I estimated, I looked at one, little packet of tea, herbal tea. I reckon that if they wanted to make a health claim, if they just called it, this is herbal tea, but if they wanted to say it makes you, improves digestion, just say they're going to make a health claim. Well, that tea might go up from, say, $12 for a little packet. It might reach $60 or $80 for the packet, just because of the complexity and the manufacturing requirements. It's not just making the claim. You then have to prove that your manufacturing facility meets pharmaceutical standards. And you know what pharmaceutical standards, they're sort of, air quality control, goodness knows what, quite a lot involved, not just that, and uniformity. And this is one of the great sort of illusions of the whole idea of how to regulate natural products. The thing is that a plant has varying amounts of its alkaloids according to where it's grown, which soil it's grown in, and so on. So if you move on to pharmaceutical standards, then it has to have an exact percentage. It's manufactured and it has to be exactly like this, this, and this, and this. Now,
so some would say that's great, Guy. Then we've got uniformity and we've got predictability, and this is science. What do you say to that?
Well, you can only achieve that level of standard by using synthetics, which are actually different from the natural plant. There's a principle in natural medicine, and especially in natural herbal medicine. It's the whole plant, not just the single extract that produces the effect. And that's definitely backed up by research.
If we're talking about backing up, let's back the truck right up. That we came from a species who wandered the plains and found medicinal herbs and plants and knew that there were certain things that really helped improve our health, our robustness, our underlying immunity. And those things stayed in place for thousands of years. And now we have this new era as of the last 100 or so years, Guy, where we have the arrogance, the hubris as a human race to say science knows better than nature in all cases. And those who doubt that only need to look at what science or the speed of science has rolled out in the last year. Even those who are saying, I believe in the jab, have to admit they've been sick 2, 3, 4 times in New Zealand since the rollout of the jabs. Should Kiwis be questioning this religion of science a lot more?
Be questioning the politicization of science. I think science in itself is something that's really rather good. I mean, it's systematic investigation and verification, but we haven't had that. We've had a sort of political science and a commercialization of science. Again, you can refer to the pandemic. Of course, it's a separate issue in many ways from natural health products. But again, you have a company with a lot of commercial clout seeking to sell its product and shortcut the whole testing procedure. With natural health products, it's a different situation. They're letting lots of products onto the market without any testing at all, citing what they call substantial equivalence, which is that, this product tastes like a strawberry, the strawberry flavor tastes like strawberry, so it's probably okay. And so you can sell that, no problem.
And that gets back to the 2016 list you referred to a couple of times earlier in our talk. That had 5,000 substances on it, but about 3,000 were synthetics? Is that right?
Yeah, 3,000 were synthetics, things to do with fragrances, cosmetics, all different kinds of foods, of course, and so on. And some of them are actually known to be carcinogenic, but they're simply thrown on the list. Certain colorings and so on, also affecting ADHD. So you have people in this country who are Dr. Julia Rutledge, for example, at Canterbury University, who is doing research on nutrition and ADHD, and has found that micronutrition, giving kids a broader source of dietary substances, including vitamins and so on, actually reduces incidences of ADHD. So the nutrition is potentially very useful here. We have a shift in diet towards ultra-processed foods. And Dr. Aseem Malhotra, cardiologist in the UK, for example, recommends that if a food has more than 5 ingredients, processed food, toss it out. Because you're just adding risk to risk. Look, going back to your people wandering the plains and so on, there's one study which looked at Neanderthal bones and found that they used herbs, just analyzing what they ate. And we have for millions of years, we've been evolving with a symbiotic co-relationship with food sources, and we can assimilate them. We're used to them. I mean, modern research is starting to show that there's a genetic exchange of information with our food sources, and that supports health. So suddenly we're throwing in a lot of synthetics, and now we've decided to go big on biotechnology. Biotechnology is going into the cell, and the cell environment is what we depend upon for our genetic stability and reproduction and so on. This is all really risky stuff, and we just don't want to go there. We'll be losing health.
There was a tremendous dentist who went, I think, about 100 years ago around the Pacific. I just can't think of his name right now, but he studied all the Pacific Island people. And he found that their link was, for example, coconut and the fish that they were eating formed incredible jawlines, beautiful teeth, perfectly aligned teeth compared with those in England. And he realized the intergenerational impact on just one aspect alone of the alignment of our teeth and our jawlines. And was somebody who then dug deep into how diet can affect from grandfather to grandson, that what that grandfather passes in terms of his good eating. This will weaken, if we go to synthetics, this will weaken our DNA.
It already is. It already is. I mean, we're seeing, starting in 2014, way before the pandemic, that longevity has started to decline in the United States.
Yeah.
And, if you've lived in the United States, you'll know that their diet is absolutely riddled with synthetic ingredients and bioengineered ingredients and so on. And, it's continued. The pandemic has accelerated that. And that's just more of the same, really.
So let's think too, from a business perspective, if we have someone saying, oh, well, a few of these will be all right, I can live with this. What's it going to affect as far as not just our health, but our businesses? Pharmacists are going to have a lot of goods taken off their shelves, aren't they? So they need to get involved in this fight. And doctors are going to be terribly out of their depth, as you said earlier. Natural health shops and natural health practitioners are going to be severely affected, I'd hazard a guess. And then we have producers of products, growers of herbs, people who import these products. I can think of someone who imports and makes a fortune out of liposulfuric vitamin C is going to be very impacted by this. Are they not, Guy?
Yeah, smaller companies will get affected, and just the cost of complying with this kind of regulation.
Yeah.
It's prohibitive. I think fundamentally this whole medical model that they're trying to bring in now, because one of the purposes of this bill actually is to facilitate the use of biotechnology in medicine. So this is one of the main purposes of the bill. It's not just about natural health products. It's also about facilitating new technologies and facilitating the rapid approval of new technologies. And when you look carefully at biotechnology, the kind of dream that is being sold is that we will personalize medicine for each individual. So we'll measure you, we'll decide exactly what you personally need, and we'll make it for you. But that's a total dream. actually, if you really want that kind of medicine, and you shouldn't really want it because it's awful, is you're going to have several very expensive biotechnologists looking after you. It's only going to be possible for the wealthy. For the general population, it's just an absolute dream, actually.
But is that going to give even those wealthy few good health? I would argue not.
No.
So where do we go with this biotechnology? I know you've started something called Globe. Tell us about this, because there are many people now saying, I don't want what these governments around the world are offering. I don't want that for my family's health. I certainly am one. Where are you going with Globe, Guy?
Globe.global is our website, and we're providing information at this stage, but we're reaching out to start a campaign for global legislation outlawing biotechnology experimentation. And we're gradually starting to get traction with this very broad idea, which is, it's based on research, though. Basically, when you look at the history of biotechnology, it hasn't worked. It's dangerous. And there's something very fundamental about that. Let me just go back one step again. DNA, you think, well, DNA is the kind of source of life, right? Well, actually, where does life come from? Look at a cell. A cell may have 40 million, a single cell may have 40 million proteins in it. It's got the DNA, but it's got a whole mechanism how to extract information from the DNA and produce proteins. And very simply put, actually, the proteins that extract the information from the DNA can only be made from the DNA. So you have a chicken and egg situation. You have a whole complete holistic system that is self-referral. No one actually knows where it comes from, but the thing it reminds me most is consciousness. And in fact, I feel that the physiology exists to support consciousness. Consciousness, in that sense, is primary. If you alter those enormously complex arrangements inside the cell, you're potentially altering consciousness, you're potentially undermining the reproductive basis of life. You're changing our identity. So there are so many things that we don't know about biotechnology, and there are so many things that are imagined by public relations. So the public perception that comes from science fiction films and pharmaceutical company brochures and public relations, it's an illusion. This is really dangerous technology. And
very much. And what you described there is something so nuanced, so subtle in its delivery to life itself, as opposed to the biotechnology, Guy, which strikes me when you talk about it as treating humans as if we are mere machines. You put petrol in here and the machine turns on and off it goes. We are not that. We are so much more than that. Explain a little bit more of that about consciousness. And it's relevant because really what we're having left now in the world is our mind, our body, our spirit. They're trying to, it seems, take control of the very essence of who we are. I won't give them my body. I wouldn't give them my body to force me to take something a government told me to take. I want to keep my body, my mind, and my spirit separate from the government, and definitely separate from big pharmaceutical. But now they're trying to even invade me via the food I want to eat. There is something very dark about this forcing, this coercing, and taking away our choices, isn't there?
There is, but it's very self-destructive. So those people who are doing this are sort of shooting themselves in the foot.
Yes.
Actually, I mean, I'm kind of thinking that, it's very clear now that the American military, the Department of Defense, have been very involved with the COVID response in the United States. And no doubt that has filtered through to New Zealand. There is a perception that we were dealing with, as far as COVID was concerned, with a bioweapon, and therefore everyone really should get vaccinated. But no one really looked into the potential dangers of biotechnology. I think a lot of people are very uneducated about biomolecular processes, biotechnology. They don't realize how essential it is to life and how easily it's damaged. You have a car. If you leave a car outside in your garden for years, it rusts, right? It just falls apart. And that's typical of the whole of life, actually. Things just deteriorate. The exception to that is life. Life actually evolves. It doesn't fall apart. Through a process, through generations, it starts to grow. It grows in knowledge. It grows in many characteristics. It's moving against what is called the second law of thermodynamics, that everything is going to deteriorate and decay in a closed system. And how does that happen? It happens because of that whole genetic setup in the cell. That actually, in a way we hardly understand, reverses decay and produces evolution and growth. And are we going to tinker with that? I mean, this information is hidden inside the cell and inside the cell nucleus. It's deliberately hidden by nature. Why would we possibly be tinkering with that? Just like the nucleus of an atom. Why do we want to tinker with that? Because the whole world will explode. It's an area, it's a no-go area. It's an area where we really don't want to go because it's the basis of who we are. That it's, and I'm not talking imagination here. I'm just talking science. I mean, colleagues of mine in the gene therapy field who are trying to, cure diseases like cystic fibrosis and inherited diseases for the good of mankind. But they're absolutely appalled at the way biotechnology, the techniques that they have developed over years, they know are dangerous. And they still haven't solved their problems. And they are appalled that suddenly it's been run out for the whole world's population without a thought for safety. And look, this madness, it's so mad. For example, in the US now, you can write to, there are a number of companies doing this, you can write to companies and ask for copies of serious illnesses like smallpox. You can actually, they can actually synthesize smallpox legally and send anybody who asks for a copy of a smallpox virus or an Ebola virus. This is, and the people who market this say, well, yeah, we really don't know whether it's dangerous, but it's legal.
This is shocking. I mean, you laugh, and it's what I said at the beginning. One wants to laugh in a kind of desperate laughter, but there's something so dark underlying this. When I first read this bill, which was, I think it was rolled out in November, and then the first reading was about December the 15th, as we were all going off on holiday. This came just on Christmas Eve. I first heard about this when we're all exhausted. And now they're going to rush this bill through for early February. So this mad, insane idea, I can see why you laugh, because it makes the government look absolutely stark raving bonkers if you really look into it. Why would a government be doing this? I mean,
there's so many priorities that they could have. There's our economy in beds, there our health system is under pressure, the housing system appears to be on the verge of collapse and so on. And they're doing this, they're wasting their time trying to regulate what we have for breakfast, for goodness sake. And look, the great thing about this is, and perhaps why we can laugh, is that it is doable to oppose this because everybody eats their breakfast. Everybody knows that food is beneficial for health. Well, almost every food we eat is beneficial for health. That shouldn't make it into a medicine.
It's insane. Or that we have to go to a doctor to get permission to have something that perhaps in one of those books like the one I held up earlier, there are thousands of them from when I was young, talking about how one can have a health crisis, go on juicing and semi-fasting and do herbs and very quickly feel better, very quickly feel a lot healthier and sleep better, and wonder at the incredible ability of the body to heal itself if we support it with real food. And this is where you talk about the food, the cells of the food. have life in them that supports the life in our own cells. There's something mystical that these people who treat our bodies as machines simply cannot access in their science laboratories, can they? And you are a scientist.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, just something as simple as sipping hot water through the day, it makes for easier digestion, and digestion is really the basis of health. Well, so hot water is healthy. Are we going to only go to doctors for hot water? It's just plain mad. It is mad. Why are they reaching for control of every aspect of life? It's a kind of mental weakness. I think it's psychopathy on the part of the government, that they imagine that these are things that they ought to control.
Well, we don't have to pretend that Kiwis are not aware. Many, many now are waking up about the jab. Many have known people to be injured, some sadly to have died, and have had the nous to question and say, could it have been the jab, even though the government continues to say it's safe and effective, as around the world more and more evidence shows it never was, and that overseas they're acknowledging that. Now people are researching things like the World Health Organization, which seems to be an organization intent on making world citizens sick, to me, Guy. Is that
that's it? Power, you know, give a person a little bit of power, and they, you know, give them a yell, they take a mile. I do want to reach out to people who are sort of changing their mind, because I think it's a very difficult. I think we're all aware it's a very difficult position, because the government came in there and said, you know, you're absolutely virtuous if you are going to get this vaccine, and it's the right thing to do, and it's moral, and the people who don't do it are somehow immoral or should be excluded. People took a position on this. They took a psychological position. You know, so enormous number of people spoke out strongly in their families and in their workplaces. I am standing for what is right. And they took an open public position on this and proudly participated in what the government was offering. And what they didn't realize was that the CVTAG, the committee that was advising the government about who should be authorized to take this, they had reservations. They were becoming aware of myocarditis. They were worried that younger people, you know, people under 40 or 50, were not really getting any benefit from the vaccine, but they were exposing themselves to risks. And then suddenly there was a shift. And it apparently, to my mind, it's a political shift where the government said, no, we're going to insist on that. Why they did it, and then the CVTAG complied with that. Now, you're there, you're having your doubts today in time, and you're wondering what to do. It's quite difficult, actually, having taken a public stance, psychologically difficult to change at this point in time, and to admit, I did wrong, or to say to other people, I did wrong. Well, you have to take courage with that. Do some research, inform yourself, look at people like Dr. Aseem Malhotra talking to Tucker Carlson, for example, where over a period of 50 minutes, he really goes through the whole situation in great detail. Inform yourself. And there's, you know, it's going to be difficult to change gear at this time, but change gear we have to. Yeah. It's a different published landscape out there. Yep. There was a time when people were saying, oh, well, you don't have the evidence. Well, quite honestly, the evidence now is very one-sided. The published evidence in scientific journals is very much calling this is potentially very dangerous.
Even the CDC in America is trying to roll back and say, oh, that we didn't quite know that it would have this effect on hearts and strokes. And, you know, we weren't really told. They're trying to pass the buck, and there'll be a lot of that coming up. I agree with you, Guy. It's very hard when you've been condemning of others as well, and aggressive, and saying, I'm doing the right thing and you're wrong and you deserve ostracism for that, to then turn around and say, perhaps I was sucked in. I was sucked in by a government that lied to me. But I have noticed on the side of those who were ostracized, there is, in terms of my circles, and I'd like your view on this, great love. I never want to judge or condemn anyone the way I was judged and condemned. If anybody wakes up now, I just want to offer love and support and as much information as I can to help that person. I think that's a really important part of this process, that we heal all this division as well that was sown across New Zealand. What's your view, Guy?
Absolutely. We have to find a way ahead.
We can't judge one another.
No. Truth alone triumphs.
Yeah.
You know, this is whatever the truth is here, it's going to come out. And it's going to come out, you know, at the pace it comes out. I mean, thalidomide, it was, you know, over a period of many years, about 10 years, where it just gradually came out. You know, the discovery of the fact that poor water supply in London was causing a cholera epidemic actually took 30 years to filter into the medical profession from when it was first proven scientifically. So these things can take a long time, but we don't have time here. You know, biotechnology is potentially dangerous. There are 137 new mRNA vaccines in the pipeline. Every continent now have big labs dealing with pathogens, dealing with biotechnology research. These products are coming on market. There's enormous investment involved. Governments are involved. There's a bandwagon going. So we don't have time with this technology. We have to start drawing the line and saying, no, hasn't worked. You know, obviously it's not effective, but also it's not safe. And it's fundamentally not safe.
For those who are diehard advocates for that, they may say, yes, we may have got it a bit wrong the first time, but we can, you know, this sort of Bill Gates thing, we can just keep tweaking it until we get it perfect. And then the next jab. Now, I heard yesterday in Queensland, just across the ditch, they are rolling out a 3-for-1. I think it's got flu, it's got COVID and one other one in there, and the scientists so happy, so cocky. This will be wonderful. It'll stop people going to hospital. You know, all the arguments. I believe that the suffering caused by this one is waking up enough people to say never again. I'm surprised how many people took 2 and are now saying, I'll never take another jab. Yeah. I felt sucked in. I don't believe even their propaganda and their marketing will be enough to overcome this word of mouth, person to person, that is happening. But I do worry very much about the food, because they seem now to be putting it in via another way, as you say, the biotechnology. A couple of things there, Guy. Do you think your new move, Globe, really can take off and get traction around the world? What sort of reaction are you having to stop this biotechnology madness?
I think at this point, I'm in correspondence with people.
Good.
This is something that has to be talked through. You know, it's one thing to say we should stop this mRNA Pfizer COVID jab. That's one thing. And you know, you're right. There's a lot of people now who've got traction here. We've got research. But to take the next step and say, look, fundamentally, this technology is flawed. That's a highly technical argument, and you know, gathering people around that argument is going to require discussion. But at the same time, it's something that has to happen. So we're trying to promote that kind of discussion. We're trying to put information out there. I know my blog and some Globe's articles are appearing in the UK press. I've been on some media there. And the other day, one of my articles was tweeted by a scientist in the UK, in the USA. It got 250,000 views.
Wonderful. I'd love to help with that. I might just talk to you about what I could send out to some of those people who reached out in the Baby Will case from around the world. Sure. And see if we can help. Secondly, is there any finance that you need? Do you need a millionaire to get behind this and help you with the pushing of this? Because what a wonderful New Zealand initiative this would be if this little country could start a worldwide movement to say we are stopping the forcing of biotechnology on human population. Sure. What do you need there, Guy?
Well, you know, I was invited to attend a conference in London, you know, next month. But yeah, I mean, finance helps. You can go to our website, hatchardreport.com. You can help. And, you know, it can be a small amount. It helps. It adds up. We have, you know, we have an influence that's much larger than our numbers.
Yes.
But yes, money, but it's knowledge. This all has to do with, for example, there's a company that recently produced an Alzheimer's drug, and the drug, as it turns out, doesn't work. And yet, you look at the budgeting of the company, they spent 4 times as much on promoting the drug than they did developing it. That's just simply on public relations. This is how companies work, So if you want to match that, you can use resources effectively, no doubt about it.
This is something that we were talking about yesterday with some friends. There are all of these Kiwis who have a lot of money, and they're holding back and wondering where is a safe place to help to make the changes. To me, this seems one very obvious one. Biotechnology is going to continue to be forced on us unless we, the people, stand up and say, we don't want it. It was never discussed with us.
That's the danger, because there are mechanisms to deliver biotechnology which you can't stop through nasal sprays, through all kinds of mechanisms that you can, there are people busy breeding plants that have vaccines in them. Biotechnology is a huge, huge enterprise, trillions of dollars involved all over the world.
This is John Wyndham level Day of the Triffids stuff. If you haven't read that book, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare scenario. Guy, we laughed earlier at the madness of trying to take away things that we all use every day and that we want, and trying to limit them, trying to take them off the shelves so we can have easy access to them and not have to grow them. But behind that, this darkness, what other ways can each of us people watching this interview who want to help, how can we stop, first of all, the rollout of this bill into law? And secondly, how can we stop this enormous world push by certain very vested interests, such as Bill Gates and the World Health Organization, to force us into biotechnology? What can individuals do, Guy?
We can arm ourselves with knowledge. We can use scattershot in our communications. I think this health bill is something that's non-controversial. We should use scattershot. We should contact as many people as possible. If we know influential people, we should encourage them to speak up. We should take care of ourselves as well. Don't get tired. Don't take this into your heart. I think it was Tennyson who said, "Those also serve who only stand and wait." There is silence. There's great power in silence. There's a great power in appreciating nature. It's much stronger than we realize. And these are great models for government. Look at the sun. The sun shines every day, and it shines on everybody, and it shines on everybody equally, and nourishes everything. This is kind of a model for government. Government should be nourishing. It shouldn't be just trying to decide how to control everyone so everyone does exactly like I want. That's a childish mistake. When I first had a responsible job back in the 70s, I really did think that management was telling everybody what to do. Although I soon got sorted out. I realized that management is about facilitating people to be successful. And that's that's a lesson that the government has to realize. These are all to do with education. This pandemic is a failure of our education system. People have come out of modern education, full of egotistic notation, aspirations for controlling everything. It's not how families work. It's not how families, parental responsibility and care. You want your children to succeed. It's nourishment that works.
And there's a huge part of this, as with the jab, that's about freedom to choose, isn't it?
Absolutely. How can you take that away from people?
And freedom to have open discussions so that I can tell you certain aspects that I know are healthy. I mean, I said about the aloe vera before, or neem oil is a great one. It's a well-known healer. It's a really powerful oil. Tell us a bit about neem. And yet, if this bill were to go through, you won't be able to tell me what you're about to tell me about neem. That would be verboten. That would be forbidden.
Neem, it's a great fungicide. For example, it's a tree, grows in India, and you can use it in very highly diluted to spray things. Right now, for example, it's very, very wet. So my zucchinis in my polytunnel have got mildew. Well, spray them with a very dilute a thing of neem and so on. It's also a blood purifier. So it can be taken internally. It's quite liable. In fact, in the 2016 list, neem was specified for external use only. So its medicinal properties, it's probably one of the most widely used medicines in India. It's beneficial in cases of parasites and things like that. It would be banned. So
that is, we must wake up. Each person who wants a healthy family, who wants their own health to be at a premium level, must get involved in this. Guy, how does somebody approach a bill that is so enormous? They seem to have put a lot of obfuscation into this bill. It's not an easy one to read, is it?
No, it's not. I think, I put out a couple of releases on this. I put out a video on YouTube.
We'll put that underneath this interview. We'll add that in.
It's about the therapeutics. I think it says something like, what will the Therapeutic Products Bill do for us, or something like that. And it's short, and it'll give you material which you can use for a submission, and very effective to go and meet your MP. I think if they get a big, inbox, then it does have some effect, particularly if you go to their Facebook accounts. Almost all MPs now have Facebook accounts. Go to their Facebook accounts and write your opinion on there, because they'll take more notice on that than they will of getting an email.
Yes.
Meet with your MP, please do. And I note that it's getting cross-party support. And there's only the Maori Party raised questions. The National Party, I've seen letters now coming back from National Party MPs to their constituents saying, we like this bill, basically. We feel that this will give people assurance, and they'll know what they're taking, and everything will be totally safe, and so it's fine. And this, you need to challenge this. It's not going to be fine. The provisions do not meet those criteria. They're not workable. And then there, the Indian community and the Chinese community. The Indian community relies on their traditional Ayurvedic medicine. They, for their home remedies. The Chinese community is exactly the same. There are more than 150 Indian ingredients, 150 Chinese medicinal ingredients, which were banned and restricted under the 2016 list. And I quite honestly, absolutely sure that the regulator is, when they're appointed, whoever they are, goodness knows who they'll appoint, but he'll walk in there and say, well, as a first base, we're going to use the 2016 list. It's a foregone conclusion.
And let's remind people that there were 2 victories pushing back on this previously, that was pushed back on by the people, so that the government stopped trying to take over and control everything we have. We have to do it again. What were some of the techniques that were used back then, Guy? What made the pushback successful back then?
Writing documents. I mean, there's still a section in the library about the parliamentary library about the 2016 bill. Writing quite long documents was one thing. Arguing these things point by point. Private meetings with John Key, who changed his mind, because look, 50% of the population more than take natural health products. So it was possible to meet with people in authority and say, we don't want this. So influential people did that. And then meeting with MPs and petitions, it was a big, and then we had an industry group. So I worked with about 15 supplement manufacturers, herbal manufacturers, and we formed an industry group, and we put pressure on the government directly from that industry group. This should happen. You've got to beware here, because there are other industry groups of big manufacturers who want this, because it'll put their smaller competition out of at a business.
And that's never good for the customer, never, when there's a monopoly or a virtual monopoly.
Especially here in New Zealand. I mean, we're such a small country that, monopolies get created so easily. So
it's such a tragedy that in that list, you and I also, as someone who worked in mainstream media, we don't even look to mainstream media anymore to fairly report, to encourage balanced debate on this. But in a good country, we would have mainstream media debates representing both sides and people able to look at this and make their own minds up. And I'm sure most Kiwis, more than that 50%, would say, well, I want freedom to choose what I put in my own body. I do not want this government overreach. But mainstream media is not helping those debates anymore, are they?
Well, it's because the funding mechanism of mainstream media has completely changed. And as we saw this week, that the Children's Health Defence filed a lawsuit in Washington, antitrust suit against the BBC, because the BBC has been organising a coalition of legacy media outlets, including the Washington Post, including level social media giants, AP, Reuters, to actually restrict the content of alternative media. And why were they doing this? Internal documents which have come into the possession of those bringing the lawsuit from the BBC had correspondence which said, we are not doing this because of particular content. We are doing this to stop competition in media, because they didn't want to lose, they were losing their audience to alternative media outlets. Whether what they were saying was true or not wasn't a concern. It was simply a matter of monopoly.
Legacy media was on its dying legs. Really, it was very wobbly before the COVID rollout, which funded it so well. So that's a real issue. And we will have to really, as a country, start to use alternate media and move away from watching the news. Someone said to me yesterday that the mainstream media is the virus at the moment because of its suppression of truth. However, on the positive side, Guy, more and more are seeking truth. I asked you earlier, how can someone approach such a meaty it's sort of fluffy more, this bill, because it isn't really full of meat. It's full of a lot of verbiage to me, and it's very hard to read. Yeah, it's very hard to read. There's nothing certain. Yeah.
Take issue with the fact that it is an enabling bill. It's a different kind of bill. It is a bill used by repressive regimes.
Yes.
Basically walking in there and saying, we have a right as a government to control what you take for your health. And we will appoint someone and he will decide for you.
Okay, so I go to my local representative. I walk in his office. I have that half-hour appointment. What do I say to him? What do I want to get across? What are the three things you'd advise each person who rings up and makes that appointment and reminds them we are in an election year? If you want me to vote for you, you'd better listen to me now. What did that person say, Guy? What are the three big things they need to hit with that? More
local... than 50% of people take natural products and wish to continue to take natural products without interference from the government. And natural products are 45,000 times safer, according to the EU, than pharmaceuticals. So they should not be controlled as pharmaceuticals. There is absolutely no need for this bill. We want to hear from you as a politician that you are getting on and solving the problems that matter to us, not fiddling about with what we have for breakfast.
Brilliant. And we want you to oppose this bill in its next reading. And these submissions must be done, or these calls, these appointments with your local MP must be done before February the 15th. That's the deadline, isn't it, Guy?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Really, really good to talk to you. And what I love is you're across all sorts of platforms. For those who wonder your background, just very briefly, you've been an international advocate for food safety and for natural medicines. You've also worked in genetic ID. So you really are qualified to speak on this. Tell us a bit about genetic ID before you go.
Genetic ID is a company set up by John Fagan. John Fagan was an award-winning cancer researcher, a molecular biologist in the US. He was in recipient of $5 million, which in those days, in the early 90s, was a large amount of money, of grants to research cures for cancer. He realized that his research was being misused by commercial biotechnology projects. He returned those $5 million of grants to the government and took a stand and created a company called Genetic ID, which was a company that used testing techniques to test and see whether foods were safe and free from genetic contamination. And his company had offices all over the world. And I was working in that and basically certified large transactions of foods and goods as safe and facilitated global trade. So I went all over the world working for him, and he was a great guy. And that company has now been sold. It's now known as Food Chain ID. It's no longer in Iowa where I worked. But, he was a pioneer of standing up, $5 million. Yes, you can have that back. I'm not going to be doing this. Great example of what is needed, the kind of courage that is needed at this point in time. So as you say, there is this growing groundswell of concern. People should feel confident that they can just step forward and they can take those big steps that are dictated by the scientific research and start to speak up. And you have to do that. That's your moral. You have these moments in life where you have these choices, and how you choose defines who you are as a person.
And defines the society we have. And I would issue that same challenge to mainstream media. Stop decrying Guy Hatchard. You've just heard his qualifications. You've heard his ethical basis of why he worked in that company and what he's done. He is speaking in the very area in which he has an innate expertise from his years of work here. And he is going to be on lots of platforms. Mainstream media, interview Dr. Guy Hatchard with respect and open-mindedness, and you do your job and question this government on behalf of the more than 50% who do not want this bill. Thank you so much, Guy. We'll talk again, and I love seeing you across lots of platforms. It's wonderful.
Lovely talking to you. Wonderful.
Great. It's great. And we will win this. Please get in and see your local constituents. Please do that. Thank you, Guy Hatchard.
Yeah, you take care. Bye-bye, Liz.